What do you do with 6 months off? That sounds amazing. So
wow, some of it was amazing
Right.
until my wife kind of realised that I wasn't really doing too much. So
Gave you a list.
Then the lists were coming.
welcome to the podcast, James Milner.
Hi Steve, thanks for having me.
No problem at all. So for watchers, listeners, do you want to introduce yourself, who you are and what you do?
Yeah, no problem at all. So my name's James. I've worked in technology recruitment, so that's IT, digital recruitment for 20 years now. Up until fairly recently, I was managing director of a large organisation, but through my own devices, decided to leave about a year ago. Had a little bit of time out, which was nice over the summer, enjoying the sunshine. Nice 6 months garden leave, and then had 6 months kind of restrictive covenant, so I couldn't work for anybody else competitively. So had a little bit of time learning some new skill sets. Actually became an executive coach or qualified executive coach. Did a lot of work in schools and universities with young people, trying to get them into tech, and more recently have joined as an owner and managing director of a consultancy called Exalto Consulting, and we do tech recruitment again. We also do coaching in the tech space and consultancy services as well.
Consulting, in what sense consulting? What do you consult on?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So we've got associate kind of partners who are experts within IT, data, technology, who will help go into end organisations, looking at strategy, might be building teams, building projects, that type of thing.
Right. Okay. Second question: what do you do with 6 months off? That sounds amazing. So
wow, some of it was amazing
Right.
until my wife kind of realised that I wasn't really doing too much. So
Gave you a list.
Then the lists were coming. The shed was getting cleared out. So I did some pretty cool things. So me and my brother had a bit of time out travelling in south of France.
very good.
Tasting a lot of wine, northern Spain, went to San Sebastian, ate a lot of food,
Yeah.
did a lot of biking, did a bit of surfing.
Oh,
So that was
amazing.
that was
Sounds
pretty
torturous.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. And then after that, I've just done a lot of learning. Anybody who knows me knows I can't sit still. So I wasn't sat on my backside doing sweet FA. I was actually really kind of, I suppose, trying to improve on things. So as I said, I did an executive coaching course. I'm in the final throes of handing my dissertation in for that at the moment, and actually a lot of practical coaching with that as well. And then spent a fair bit of time working with young people, kind of in schools, universities, just chatting really about how to get into tech or how to get into the real world of jobs, and just actually dispelling a few myths of what work's actually about when you're in school or university.
Excellent. And so now you're back into the swing of things then. So I wanted to get a view from you really, just in terms of the market, the recruitment market and the tech skills market as well. So what's it like at the minute at the coalface? What's your view?
Interesting question. I think, well, so there's a few things to this. I think obviously I've been out for the last year out of it, but actually a lot of my friends and ex-colleagues are still in the industry, so I've been very close to what's been going on. If you'd asked me this question about 18 months ago, 2 years ago, I would have said it's absolutely buoyant. Nobody can find the skills that they want. Salaries are going through the roof. I've got a very good friend who's a software development manager of a large organisation, and most of his team were being picked off by remote working roles based out of London, paying double the money for exactly the same skill set, and obviously everybody was leaving to take those roles. Over the last kind of 18 months, things have changed slightly. I think it's still really hard to find very good people in very technical positions, but actually more and more people are coming onto the market. We've seen quite a big move over in the US, obviously by Silicon Valley Bank going pop, and then a lot of the big tech firms laying off lots of people. That has trickled down a little bit, even on a local basis. A number of consultancies have let people go recently, and in quite large numbers. And so there has been a bit of a wash back onto the market, especially within the software development and kind of tech space, and also at the leadership kind of level as well. There's a number of people that I know at the moment who are in kind of program director or head of engineering type roles who are looking on the market. So I think it's changed dramatically in the last 18 months. I wouldn't say it's terrible. I've been through a couple of recessions in my career, and there's definitely been times when there've been floods of people looking. But it is changing slightly, and I think the market will probably be a little bit flatter this year, and maybe a bit more parity coming back, and some of those salaries dropping down a little bit.
You are right. I mean, I remember 12, 18 months ago speaking to people, other businesses, and developers were going for silly salaries. I mean, we're talking 70, 80, 90 grand a year for devs, probably, which is very different to probably what I was seeing 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah.
So is that, are people still paying that amount for good software developers?
They are for top talent.
Yeah.
I think what was happening kind of 12 months ago and maybe 18 months ago as well, and maybe you'll have seen this as well, Steve, is that I think people were getting a little bit scared that they were missing out on people. So they were paying inflated salaries for people with, well, or in my opinion, inflated salaries for people with not a great deal of experience, on the basis that they felt that they weren't going to find anybody else at all. And a bit like we were talking about kind of off air just before we came on, I think sometimes people were reacting a little bit in the market and hadn't really thought about the long-term view of what they were looking to hire for, and suddenly had a burning platform within the business and think, I need somebody, I absolutely need somebody right now, so what can we do about it, rather than planning a little bit further ahead.
You mentioned earlier, James, about sometimes large consultancy or whatever down in London were picking off talent up in the north, paying London wages for northern living, which is like, that's a win-win situation for people up here. Has that sort of dissipated? And if so, why do you think that has?
No, not really. So it's an interesting one, actually. I would say still within the tech landscape, and when I'm talking about the tech landscape, I'm for clarity here, we're probably talking about software developers, anyone within the software engineering team, maybe data, DevOps, those type of roles, the hands-on doing positions. In most organizations we're recruiting for, there's still a very large focus on remote first or kind of soft hybrid. And what I mean by that is kind of maybe come in the office once or twice a month. So you can get away with being located anywhere. And so that's opened up these talent pools all over the country, but not necessarily just all over the country. It could be, anywhere in Europe where you can have a digital nomad visa or what have you. So no, it hasn't gone away. I mean, we've had a role come through this week that's a project manager for a software consultancy in a specific skill set, and it's remote. It can be anywhere, and so it's paying kind of 85k. So obviously 85k goes a lot further, in Hull or in Leeds than it does in London. So yeah.
It's interesting. I expected to see, and I think I am seeing more businesses going back in the office, just over time. I mean, we spend most of our days in the office nowadays, and I think we see the value of that as well versus kind of working from home. I think communication is a lot better. Ideas exchange much easier when people are in and around each other. Is that what you reckon?
Yeah, well, obviously I'm here with you, so I see that. The question I was going to ask James on the back of what you were saying was actually, is that still one of the requirements of your candidates, that actually, granted, if it is a sort of flexible role, as in where they're situated, obviously that speaks for itself. But when you're taking on candidates or you're analysing candidates, is that still one of their top priorities, that actually they want to be home working 90% of the time? What's the sort of driver that's saying James, go and find me roles that have X, Y, or Z.
Yeah, it's a real mixed bag, to be honest.
Okay.
And I think it'd be hard to quantify. I haven't really looked at the data to give you an honest answer. But anecdotally, I'd say that still there's a large proportion of people who like being home-based. Probably 60 to 70%. And so again, I won't name the name, we're on the podcast, but there's a large organisation based in Leeds who have a huge office in the middle of, in the centre of Leeds, which was mainly made up of software engineering individuals, and they don't come in at all. It's just completely remote, and by and large, most of them like it. Now, on the flip side, you will get people who go, "Look, I don't like this. My company's gone remote first. I don't like it. I'm now looking for a new job where I can come in the office as well." But it does seem to be the minority. It's a strange thing, though, isn't it? So, our organisation ourselves, take away, actually the candidate side of things, we like being in the office. We're a 4 days in the office business, mainly because I suppose because we're a startup. We like being around other people, sharing ideas.
Yeah.
Actually, it's moving so fast that it doesn't really work being remote all the time. So I personally like it. I can see the benefit of it, but I can also see the flip side of it, that a lot of people seems to like having the remote kind of option on it.
Solitude.
Yeah.
Why do you think is that the consultancy sector in particular has been seemingly hit in terms of kind of making redundancies probably more than others?
Interesting one. And I don't know whether that's a local one to us,
Yeah.
just because I know that a few have been hit. I think, again, anecdotally, some of it is on the way that certain organisations have been run. I think, classically within consultancy as well, especially software consultancy, they often rely on large projects. And if one of those projects is pulled, then you could have a massive bench. And then it depends on how robustly you're running your business and what cash reserves you've got. It's the same as any business, isn't it? Classically, it's like, then a lot of consultancies, especially when they've been owned by VCs or PEs, are maybe pushed a little bit hard and don't necessarily have the war chests to be able to go through those times of when it drops back a little bit. But it is a strange one because I don't know, sitting here, this is just my view from the outside, but you do wonder a little bit about who's actually running them as well, and what their attitude is to it as well. Unfortunately, I have had to make people redundant myself in my time, and that was through COVID. But it was the absolute last resort, really. And what you see on the culture side of it, I don't know whether you guys have done it yourself, but you see it on the culture side that it impacts it so badly that you want to try and avoid it at all cost, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So it seems to be in a lot of organisations these days, it's a lot more cutthroat, and it's like, oh, the numbers aren't quite making it, let's just cut a few people and we'll go again. But I'm not sure they always think about the long-term cultural piece of it.
Hi guys, just jumping in, I want to talk about one of the services we offer, which is robotic process automation, also known as RPA. That is software that replicates human behavior. So if you've got people downloading spreadsheets, attaching them to emails, going on portals, downloading information, moving data around, all that stuff is perfect for a robot. So if that's interesting, get in touch, let's have a chat, let's see if we can help. Enough from me, back to the conversation. I think it comes back to funding as well. If you've got private equity funding, venture capitalist funding, then ultimately those guys want growth, don't they? And that means pouring bodies in to a consultancy business. But ultimately, as we found, the more bodies you have in the consultancy, that the bigger the sales pipeline you need to feed that.
Exactly,
and if you can't keep feeding it, then you end up with a bench, and ultimately you can't keep that for too long. So it is a balance between investing for growth, but also making sure that you've got that kind of sustainable business as well.
Yeah, no, agreed.
Good stuff. All right. So what's happening in terms of, you mentioned about working with younger people and getting them into technology, which is something we do a lot of. We tend to recruit graduates and bring them into the business and train them up. What are the, I guess, gaps that you're seeing at the minute between when a grad leaves university and what they need to succeed in the workplace?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and we touched on this last week when we had a bit of a chat, didn't we? And I suppose I'll go a bit wider with it if that's okay and kind of bring it back. But I kind of fell into this space a few years ago. I was doing some work with Leeds Beckett University just on some of their careers days, and they asked me to pull a workshop together and work with some of the people, some of the young people who were coming out of university and weren't quite sure where they were going, and to maybe have a conversation with them about technology as a potential choice for it. And since then, I've been working with different groups, some in schools, some in universities, and so the first conversation I had with the Leeds Beckett kind of cohort of people was very much focused around kind of awareness and trying to, I suppose, dispel the myths of careers that are available after university. So I don't know about you guys, but like my career, I've worked in recruitment for 20 years, but no one says to your mum or dad when you're 5, I want to be a recruitment consultant. No one's ever heard of it. So, and I've always had a little bit of a thing on my shoulder of like, I never really knew exactly what I wanted to do when I left university. And I don't know, for some reason I always thought that was just something that I had. But when I started chatting to people, it was like loads of people have got exactly the same kind of thoughts and maybe issues. And I think one of the things I felt was that there wasn't really the right kind of education available or just telling people what was really available in terms of jobs. So look, everyone knows you can be a doctor, you can be a vet, you can, all the classic ones, fireman, policeman, what have you. But nobody was talking about jobs that you might be able to get in IT, and specifically how much these salaries were paid, what skills you had to do these. And so once I started chatting to some of these young people about some of the roles that are available in IT that weren't kind of coding in a dark room, locked away from everybody, not talking to anybody, it's actually, look, you could be a salesperson, you could be a project manager, you could be an account manager. There's, all these different business kind of roles that are available within an IT kind of organization. They seem to light up a bit. And I just got quite passionate about it and really enjoyed doing it. So that's kind of where it started from. And then I started doing slightly different kind of workshops and pieces of work all around those type of things.
You're right. You're absolutely right. And so how do we solve that problem? Because if I want to recruit a developer, let's say, there's a computer science course and I can go and recruit from that course, essentially. If I want God forbid, another digital salesperson, there is no university course for digital sales degree, is there? So, and we do struggle with that, filling that role. We really do, because like you say, nobody wants to grow up to be JV. But how
I think James actually said that, to be fair.
How do we recruit for that role? What's your advice?
Oh, it's an interesting one, isn't it? And taking a few bits that you said there, Steve. So we'll come back to that one. So I think one of the inherent problems, and I've nicked this off a chap called Rupert from Huddersfield Uni, so shout out to you, is that I think that where we're going in terms of skills within the workplace, they are more... So careers are a little bit more skills based now than they are kind of education and certificate based. But the education system is very much still, here's a certificate, this is what you've done. So and look, I haven't got all the answers, but it's kind of piecing it together a little bit. And actually, are we teaching young people the right skills that we need for this workplace of the future? Tying it with your podcast, the workplace of tomorrow. My honest answer is I don't think we probably are, and we're also not giving them the education around the types of roles that are currently even available within organisations and what you actually need to do to get there as well. So I think one of the other bits that I've been looking at a lot is kind of like the skills around your EQ, really. So personal skills, interaction with people. Again, we talked last week, Steve, about there's a big piece of kind of anxiety and within young people at the moment of just actually coming into the workplace and actually not knowing what it's all about. A lot of people, especially in college, university, have done that through COVID kind of times. They haven't even been coming into university, never mind going out into the workplace and meeting people. So a lot of those kind of personal skills, especially that you get within a sales environment, I think a lot of people are lacking a little bit at the moment and unaware of what they need to use within a work environment.
So interesting, you mentioned about the skills versus tests and certificates at the end of it. It's been a theme throughout a number of our podcasts where we question whether we're educating our children and children's children for the jobs of today / tomorrow. Yeah. But interesting you should say that. I'm not intending to be controversial, but the whole the anxiety thing, which is a very serious subject, but it's kind of like just get out there and experience it. So more around that is, I guess for me, is there should be more between business and colleges and universities to get people to come in for taster days and things like that, because I started on a completely different career path. I was offered an apprenticeship doing something, never even had a clue what was going on. I went in for a day. I tried 5 different departments, said that was really interesting, and luckily I got the apprenticeship in that particular area. But ultimately, that was a long time ago. But ultimately, taking it away from him before he mentions it,
Chimney's Feet was one of them.
Yeah, easy now. But ultimately, I think there needs to be more done with university students, college students, where it's like they start going in and trying lots of different things, because ultimately, if you don't, I get the anxiousness and levels of anxiety, but if you don't actually know why you're getting anxious about it, just go and find out and then go, do you know what, that's not for me. And very quickly you can get a sort of a green list and a red list of the things that you want to do. And I think business and educational leaders need to do more to get that working.
Yeah, it's an interesting, a couple of parts there, aren't there? So I think definitely there is a missing link, in my opinion, between some of the businesses, schools, universities, colleges. There are some good companies doing some stuff around it and starting to make a difference. I did something this week actually, which was called the Tech Green Challenge, which was in a school and I was one of about 10 or 15 volunteers from industry, and we basically went into a school in Leeds with a charity, the Ahead Partnership, and we were helping the kids who were they were like 10 and between 10 and 14 basically build a green sustainable app, and that was a really good experience, and it was clearly well thought out, done with good people, and it's a move in the right direction. However, there aren't a lot of these organisations doing that. I think that they're missing this proper kind of, when you go and actually do internships and placements, where I've had a couple of people from Leeds Uni on internships and placements, and there were a lot of students who were looking for it, but actually not that many companies offering them anymore. So I think there's definitely a missing link there. I think the mental health piece is such a wide landscape that it's a really tricky one to give it an absolute, verbatim answer on it. I think so many people are suffering full stop. But I think the overriding thing that I've found when I've been with some of these young people at school, kind of universities and some of the colleges as well, is that there's been different levels of anxiety about everything. So I've done quite a few mock interview ones as well. So again, you go in and like try and help them prepare for interviews and stuff. And some people you get in there super confident, amazing individuals, they're going to be a star in whatever they do. And other people can't even come in the room, and they're clearly suffering with a lot of stuff. And I think the levels of, in terms of proportion or the percentage is much higher than it has been in the past, and I think that's probably where I was coming at it from. Sure. And I certainly find that within the groups when I was at uni, when they're prepping for interviews, they're anxious about the interviews and that face-to-face kind of interaction just in general. And so some of the sessions I've been working on is just a little bit of like how to deal with that. And it's a bit of self-management really. Rather than necessarily some of the things that you might think you would be working on. It's actually quite base level stuff. I
think it's been a perfect storm for grads, I guess, over the last 2 years, because you've got COVID where they probably haven't been given the exposure that probably you would have done 4 or 5 years ago. But then they're coming out and getting jobs probably on very high salaries, actually, for their experience and knowledge. But then businesses are businesses at the end of the day, and if they're paying high salaries, then their expectations of what they want off the back of that is higher as well. So I kind of feel sorry for grads over the last few years. I think it must have been a challenging time to go into a business, but I guess speaking from our experience, you have to give them time. You have to accept that if you're going to recruit a grad, it's going to take 6 months of working with them and giving them the exposure to clients, etc. That you can't just throw them in the deep end, can you? It's just not fair.
No, I agree with you actually, but I think a lot of companies do, and it's an interesting one as well. Going back a little bit to the skills versus kind of educational piece, especially within the tech sector, and again, you guys will have seen a lot of this. There's a lot of these organisations now that do kind of boot camps, where they'll upskill somebody, become a coder in 8 weeks, or all these type of things, and look, a load of them doing great work, and there's a lot of stuff where you're cross-skilling, upskilling people. But again, a lot of those are, once you've done your piece, you're then presented to an end customer, and you're on your own and go and deliver. And often the end customer's paid a lot of money. They want results fairly quickly, and you are in at the deep end again with it as well. So not many of them give what I'd call like more ongoing kind of pastoral care, or even like upskilling over time. It'd be interesting to see some of them going more down that route a little bit as well, where you continue to upskill people over time.
We're also seeing, I guess, a lot of people retiring as well during COVID as well, and not necessarily been replaced. Is that fair? Are you seeing that in the market?
Yeah, and also a lot of people moving location. So yes, definitely people retiring. Yeah. I mean, one of the big ones I've seen recently, and I was chatting to a contact this morning, which is probably why it's in my head, actually moving over to Portugal. So you're probably aware, but Portugal has become a massive tech hub. And so all the large companies are there. They're offering brilliant visas. It's low taxes for companies starting up over there. Low cost of living. It doesn't matter if you're British, you can still go and live there for 5 years. Like, they're giving it's like digital nomad visas, but a bit more now as well. So it's so many people that I know are kind of moving out there for a different lifestyle.
That's the next office then.
Absolutely, Lisbon, So that's businesses like ours recruiting British developers, but British developers using a nomad visa. In Portugal. Interesting. And are they building? Are they
weekly one-to-one?
I'll come to you this week. And are they building offices in Lisbon and Porto?
So Lisbon's the biggest one, but Porto's following just behind. But the Guardian did a big piece about it as well. So it's so I know quite a few people who've gone out there on some. It's all of the large organisations you can think of. All the large US tech companies that are all out there now. It's great for an employer's stance, because the taxes are so low. So Portugal are actively using it to try and boost their economy, and they've done a good job of it.
And so are people moving from the likes of India, China development? Are they bringing that more into Europe, or does that remain and it's UK onshore development resource, which is probably going nearshore?
It's a really good question. There's a bit of a mix there as well. So we're still seeing quite a lot in Eastern Europe.
Okay.
Still seeing quite a lot out in India as well. Although cost of living's going up a little bit there as well. So I have seen quite a lot coming back onshore as well. And then you've got a bit of the nearshore stuff, kind of like Portugal and as well. But again, some of the salaries on offer out there are quite good as well. So whether you'd save a huge amount by going there, I think you probably would do. But there's also just a level of people that you can find.
Okay, me again, just jumping in to talk about one of the processes that we often get asked to automate, which is the processing of supplier invoices, also known as accounts payable automation. So what does that mean? Well, most businesses receive invoices from their suppliers, and a lot of businesses still have people that are manually reviewing those invoices, making sure that they're correct, making sure they're accurate, and then manually rekeying them into a finance system or an ERP system. Well, our solution can automate that process. So typically an invoice will come in, we'll use capture technology to understand what's on that invoice. We'll then match that data up against goods received note to make sure that we've received the product. We'll match it up against purchase order data to make sure that somebody has placed an order for that product. And ultimately, if we can match that up, we can automatically push that into an ERP system or finance system, and nobody has to touch it. How good does that sound? If there are exceptions, if there are things that need to be checked, that's fine. We can use digital workflow to push that to somebody to eyeball it and say, is this correct or does something need to change? Ultimately, though, that can then be pushed again into an ERP system or a finance system. This is about making your life easier. It's about making operations as quick and as efficient as possible. And we do that all the time. If that sounds interesting, then get in touch. That's enough from me. Back to the podcast.
What about specific roles that are massively in demand versus supply? I remember a few years ago, I went to a conference, they were talking about data scientists at the time. As you just could not find enough data scientists. Is that still the case, or are there new roles that you've got that kind of imbalance between demand and supply?
Really good question. I think it changes. It does change. Cybersecurity it's still pretty hot, and data is still hot. Definitely AI. I mean, it depends again on the level of quality that you're looking for within there. So, certain software development roles are much harder to find than others. Again, going back to your business, RPA, process automation, still pretty tricky, to be honest, as well. So I would say data, the influx of data and AI roles that we've got as a comparison throughout the business, we've probably got the highest proportion of data and kind of AI type roles that I've ever seen. And I actually used to be, going back like 5-6 years ago, I used to be a data recruiter. That was kind of, when I was on like hands-on job, I was very much in the data space. Data scientists are still quite hard to find good people, because when you're looking at true data scientists, my brother's actually a data scientist, a very, very good one. When you're looking at true data scientists, it's very much on the math skills rather than the tool set that you've used. And so you've got the competition from the big banks, the big betting organizations. You by and large have to have at least a master's, if not a PhD. So there's just a smaller pool of these people in the in the first instance as well. And data's ever more prevalent. Chat GPT and everything in the AI space. Everyone wants to do something with the data now. So there probably are more data roles still. But I would say on the data roles, interestingly, you've got me thinking about it now. I think where we're seeing the influx of the roles at the moment probably isn't on the front end, kind of manipulating with the data so much at the moment, but it's more on the engineering side. So it's actually getting the data from your data lake, cloud, wherever you want to. And the engineering pipeline piece at the moment is, I think a lot of people are kind of setting up their data engineering pipelines to be able to do something with it in the future.
Okay, so it's stuff under the bonnet, moving the data around. Okay. What about the recruitment market? I'm interested in your view on that, in terms of how do you think that's going to evolve over the next sort of 5-10 years, and how's technology going to impact on that?
Yeah, it's a really good question. It's finger in the air time, isn't it?
I think that's what we do.
Literally, when Chat GPT came out and a few other tools, I was like, well, this might be the end of recruitment. Right, it's time to get farming again or something. But it's a real tricky one. I mean, the tech recruitment landscape actually is a real myriad of things, because there's so many other recruitment companies. There's lots of internal recruitment teams and people doing it directly. There's a lot of these software kind of platforms now that profess to do a lot of direct sourcing for people as well. So again, as an organization, as a company, you would pay a software as a service kind of payment to one of these one of these software providers to allow the recruitment to kind of happen for you. So it's a real mixture, to be honest. I think certainly within the technology space, I see more and more automation coming into the mundane kind of day-to-day tasks. But a computer or robot's always going to be better at doing those type of tasks, better, faster. They're not going to make the mistakes that humans do. So I think the industry needs to go away from the transactional side and more towards the value. Okay. And so actually the bit that I've been saying to our teams is like, where do we actually get our superhuman kind of powers back? Where's our real value add? And that's actually with the customers, really understanding what they're looking for, spending more time face to face, actually, getting off our backsides and getting back out there again instead of sat behind your computer, just actually sending emails and doing that transactional kind of piece. I think that bit will die, and anybody who continues to do that side of things, both internal or external, will lose it. But the people who adopt the technology, move with it, and then add your human bit to it, will probably be the ones that'll take it to the next level.
And do you see more, I guess, is it the gig economy we call it, in terms of using Fiverr and other marketplace platforms to connect resources?
Yeah, that's a really interesting one, isn't it? So Fiverr, actually, I've had to play with it myself. So when I was looking at some resource to do some small design stuff, I can see it happening. I think that there is. I mean, the actual recruitment agency market is a bit ripe for disruption, actually, because I think we're behind the market in a lot of ways. So the person who works it out and ties it all together potentially could do very well from it. But it is incredibly distributed. And I think there's also a little bit of a human psychology element to it, that people like speaking to people and don't necessarily trust in platforms for when they're making one of their biggest decisions in your life. So, if you look at myself, I've only really ever had about 4 proper jobs, take away moving bottles in a factory when I was like 16 or something, but I haven't had lots of jobs. So actually, when you're looking for a new role, it's a really big decision, and I don't think people are quite there yet with that fully automated piece. They still like to speak to another person. I think about senior people that I know who are in like CIO level roles or program director roles, and when they're looking for a new role, they'll give me a call and a few other trusted people, and they will go out and explore the open market and apply for adverts, but they'll always ring somebody up as well because they want to sanity check what the market's like. They want to understand things. So I think there's still value in that human interaction piece.
Is that the key tool for you in terms of your network, or is it the likes of LinkedIn as a platform to find people, or how do you connect
it's a really
people to the right roles?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And I think, so in terms of the question you asked has got a few different meanings for me because my role's slightly different within the business. But, in terms of actually connecting people to roles, yes, we use... So we will use LinkedIn, spend a blooming fortune on LinkedIn. And LinkedIn is very good, but strong network. I've got 20 years experience. The other 2 chaps that I've started the business with, they've both got about 20 years experience as well. So we've got our black books of connections. But in reality, when you actually look at where you place people from, a lot of it's from online job boards as well. So and that changes, and the return on investment that you get from that changes as well. So it is a bit of a mixture, but I think there is more of this. So LinkedIn's an interesting one because it's the way we've used it to find people has very much been or in the last kind of 5 years has very much been a LinkedIn recruiter platform. So for those people who don't know listening, you can actually have a LinkedIn recruiter license where you can go and actively kind of headhunt people, I suppose, through the platform. You still have to message them. But it's a very expensive kind of platform. But if you look at the way that the platform's changing, it's going a lot more social now. It's a very close to an Instagram kind of model now, and you guys all know this, you get your followers up, get your connections up, and actually the way that you position yourself and put your content out drives people to you. And I can see a lot more on that on the candidate space happening as well. So whilst that's a good way to acquire customers, I can see that will be a good way to kind of acquire candidates in the future as well. So I think everything is changing, and I do see more of the social platforms may be the way to attract candidates in the future.
I have to say it's powerful for us. I mean, we do recruitment using LinkedIn in terms of cut out the middleman and do go direct to people. And I think the content that we put out there, the podcasts, 7 times out of 10 it's mentioned during the recruitment process. People do seem to pick up on it, and hopefully it's perceived as a good thing.
You saying, James, around how recruitment sector is ripe for disruption. What, not specifically, but are there any particular areas where you think actually if this area is, needs to be disrupted to add more value to our clients and candidates?
Yeah, so it's an interesting one. So I think, look, there are other companies doing this out there, but one of the things we've looked at doing, and we have got, it's one of our guiding principles, is that we give all of our candidates feedback. And I know that sounds silly and every candidate should get feedback, but I think within the recruitment industry, actually, the vast majority of companies don't give everybody feedback. And I think that's also the case within a lot of organizations as well. And when I mean everybody, we mean absolutely anybody who applies. Now, it might be that you're not going to get like a huge amount of feedback if you've sent, I don't know, let's give an example. A business analyst sends a CV in for a project management role. Unfortunately, they're not going to be right because they don't have the relevant skill set, but at least they deserve an answer back to say, thanks for applying. Unfortunately, you're not right, and here's something else. It might closure, exactly. It's a not knowing piece. So that isn't necessarily disruption, but it's certainly something that I believe passionately that the industry is really bad at, and it's something we've put in as a guiding principle within our business, that every single person gets feedback. The industry as a consultancy kind of industry, or the agency industry, is very sales focused as well. So, and I'm sure you guys know the way that it works is that consultants get commission based on the placements they make. So they'll get a little cut of how much the business makes on each one. So it's a direct sales model. And there isn't necessarily anything wrong with that from a motivational point per se, but it can lead to slightly strange behaviors, and you'll know yourself from a sales perspective. So again, one thing we've got to look to do, we've changed that to be more of a customer kind of centric piece. So actually our consultants are incentivized by their customer centricity scores. So again, that's something that we've looked to change in there. So this is what we've done personally. That's a mini kind of disruption. If you take it from a much larger perspective, look, it's basically connecting people together, and the model's been the same for ages. So, and there are software companies that are trying to disrupt it. How do you connect all these people together? How do you join the dots in it? And, a lot of them have been kind of algorithm based, and I'm sure somebody will get it to a certain point where it's probably a little bit more intuitive than it is now. And again, if there's some kind of human face in there, and there's loads of ways that it can be kind of disrupted. So yeah, I think it's a really interesting one.
I think years since I had to apply for a role. Thankfully, he hasn't told me anything different yet. But in all seriousness, one of the things I found, I pride myself on the relationships that I develop with my clients and with the internal stakeholders. And one of the things that frustrated me way back when was that it was like you will not get a response unless you're successful, and it's like, do you know what, fine, but for me to then be able to go, all right, because sometimes you see the classic, you think, do you know what, 90% of that role I can do with standing on my head, and there's 10%. Teach me, and I'll deliver you an awful lot of value. But because there's either computers or people going, no, you don't tick that last box, so you're not worthy. It's like, actually, just that bit of feedback for people that are looking for roles, I think is extremely important. And you've got so what you're saying that Exalted do, I think's brilliant, because I think there's nothing more than just someone going, do you know what, I've had closure on that one, and I just need to sharpen up on that, or do a course, or do something.
And that was part of it as well. That's very much that. There was a number of ways that we kind of looked at this, and one of the things that we kind of looked at was, so our strapline is people-centric recruitment consultancy and coaching, and it was looking at the relationship you've got with your customer. So clearly you need to deliver. You need to find the right people for your customer. If you can't do that, you're not going to get paid any money, and they're not going to think that you're any good anyway. You need to treat your candidates incredibly well. Look, for every role you've got, you might have 100 people apply. Well, only one person is going to get that job. So what about those 99 other people? What are they saying about you? How are you treating them? And how would you like to be treated yourself? And then also your employees as well. So actually, how are you treating your employees? Unfortunately, the last organisation I worked for didn't necessarily treat certain people very well, and that was one of the reasons why I left. And so again, I've got a big bugbear that you need to treat people incredibly well, because you're not going to grow a great company unless you've got great people working with you as well. So that was kind of core to our kind of foundation of what we're looking to do, really. And it sounds really simple, but I think it's doing the small things really well consistently. And look, we will get it wrong, and there definitely will be problems at times, but it's trying to do those little things right all the time to actually make a big difference and actually have people be promoters of your business, because that's a great marketing tool if you can get everyone saying, look, we've had a great experience.
Absolutely. I'm intrigued, James, also around your different approach to incentivizing your team. So I'm in sales, I've got targets, I've got commissions and things like that. In fairness, I'd like to think that doesn't impact what I think I do right for my client and for the business. Obviously the two need to marry up. So how was it taken when you started the business and you're right, well, this is how we're going to do it, it needs to be customer centric? How was that taken?
So it's an interesting one, and I think we've gone with what I would probably describe as a hybrid model, and over time whether we move to a full model is yet to be determined. But I'll kind of talk through it. So and without giving any internal trade secrets away on it, but so we still have a classic kind of commission model. So there is still, so if somebody places somebody into a business and that business pays Exalto some money, then that salesperson will still make some money for that placement. But what we've done as a business, which is slightly different, is that we've committed to giving away 10% of the company profits each year back to the employees, as long as they hit certain metrics. And so those metrics are based, they still have to hit a certain percentage of their sales target, but the other part is completely on customer and candidate feedback scores. So it's a bit like a net promoter type scores. So it kind of keeps them honest through the year of the fact that they're actually treating people in the best possible way and upholding this customer-centric approach that we've got. Because one of the problems I looked at is the fact that if you have this great customer-centric kind of ethos from the outside, but we still use a very classic sales model inside, our consultant's going to be incentivized to do the right behaviors. So you have to change the business process systems to actually align with the values of the organization. We did actually think of going completely customer centric with it and just on your scores. But one of the things we looked at when we modeled that, or one of the thoughts, I don't know, trying to think of a better way of saying it, is what we didn't want really is amazingly customer centric people who are having the best conversations with people but aren't actually placing anyone and making the business any money. I think somebody called it, we don't want a bunch of weed smoking hippies in this laissez-faire type, because it wouldn't be a high performing business then as well. So we've gone with the hybrid model. Look, it's a new setup, it's a new business. We haven't done it before, so it's to be proved. But
is the customer satisfaction metric, if you like, is that as a team or is that an individual level?
An individual level, and it's measured kind of regularly, both with customers and the candidates that they're engaging with, and not necessarily just ones that they're placing as well.
Okay, so there's 10% of the profit goes in that pot. They get access to their slice of that 10% if they hit certain customer satisfaction metrics.
Yeah.
Interesting. You're right. From our experience, you've got to try and incentivize the right behaviours, and you're right. It's got to be a combination of performance and ultimately profitability, but also making sure that customers are happy, and that can be finding the balance can be a challenge at times. But I'm intrigued in terms of probably going back to the market, but as it stands today, would you say it's a recruiter market, or would you say it's a candidate market? Because 12 months ago, it was very much a candidate market. I think it's fair to say you could almost name your price.
Definitely.
Where are we at the minute?
It depends. And it depends on what job role you've got. So I would say if you are if you're in one of the business change kind of areas, so project manager, business analyst, if you're head of department, it's probably more a recruiter employee market. If you're in a tech discipline, one of the ones we mentioned earlier, so it could be software development, could be data, could be AI, you probably still can pick. That's probably fair. So and you can see that in the behavior of the people we've got working for us. So in the morning we know that there's a great new software developer available. Everyone's going, right, where can we've got about 10 companies we can send it to. But if and sorry to all the project managers out there, but if we have a project manager apply, no one's jumping around really. It's more, okay, which companies do we know?
Where can we find a place?
Yes, yeah.
And I'm going to get two different answers to this question, I think, then. But so if you had a role today that was, let's say, a software developer in Leeds, how many candidates are you expecting to go for that, roughly?
It depends on the language, the skill set. I would say if you look at our metrics, we're probably getting 2 or 3 for each role at the moment. Okay. So more than we were this time last year. But there are certain organisations we deal with. If you find one person, they will take a person. So and same question, but for project manager BA, we're talking several. Again, similar to. Sorry, on the flip side. So when I said similar, I meant BA and project manager. You could easily probably have 20. Now, will they be of the same caliber? And it really depends. I mean, look, one project manager is not the same as another project manager. It's very different in different organizations, and it depends exactly on the skill set and what you're looking for. But there just are a lot more people available, and I think that's probably there is a little bit to do with how many large change and transformation programs are there kicking off at the moment in flight. We're certainly seeing more contractors become available. I would have said this time last year, there was certainly a higher proportion in work.
Are you seeing? Remind me what's happening with IR35. Actually, is that coming to force now in the private sector? And are you seeing that change the market?
Yeah, a good couple of years ago now. So as people know, the onus went onto the organisation to make the determination rather than on the individual, and that came in a few years ago now. That did impact the market. It depends on the market and industry. So certain industries, finance were one that actually took, by and large, took quite a carte blanche approach to it and put a lot of people inside. And a lot of organisations were, should I say, advised by certain large organisations that this might be the most... or the safest way to do it, or the easiest way to mitigate the risk was just put everybody inside. Interestingly, though, lots of organisations didn't go down that route, and I've seen it reversed in a number of companies as well. So, it's a really tricky one because it depends on your customer base. When I was in my last role prior to this, we had quite a large number of contractors running, and I would say probably 60 to 70% were outside still.
Right.
So still quite a high number, to be honest.
So you're still seeing plenty of people going down the route of becoming self-employed contractor, because there was a lot of talk before IR35 came in to say that this would be the end of that kind of role, but that's not happened.
I think these are the doom mongers and the accountancy companies who want people to go inside and they make a little margin on it. And no, I don't think it'll ever go away. I mean, if you look at any other organisation, any other country where they've implemented similar rules previously, because lots of them around the world have. We just happen to be a little bit late to the party on it. It hasn't stopped contracting at all. In the classic old school way of contracting, where you have your own limited company and it's a business to business relationship, that still goes on, and in many ways, if it's set up in the right way with the organisation, you have the right liabilities, indemnities, deliverables, risks in there, there's no problem.
You can be outside of IR35.
You can be outside of IR35 and be a contractor as long as you've got the right setup in place. I think, it's not just contractually, you need to actually be making sure you're living and breathing it as an organisation. But there's also, it's not going to stop the need for temporary labour, or however you want to call it, is temporary or contract labour. There are going to be projects where you need people to come in and deliver certain pieces of work.
Okay, and last bit for me, we talked about recruitment, but what about retention? So how are you seeing businesses keep hold of talent? Are there is it back to salary, or are there other things, other ways that people are achieving that?
Really good question, this. And I think some organisations have got it brilliant, have really understand it, and others don't. I've looked at a lot of the theory of this because I've had it both kind of internally when we've been losing people in teams, and I think some of that is, it's been cultural, and then, some of it is clearly around rewards and recognition. Me personally, I think when you look at something, so I don't know if you've come across like Gallup and like the Gallup,
we do it here.
Yeah.
We use it here.
So, and it's, for anybody who doesn't know Gallup, like the 12 steps of like employee engagement is a fantastic way, I think, to kind of look at ways that try and retain people, and if you go through everything in there, it pretty much rings true, whatever you look at in the market. Clearly, if somebody comes in and offers you double the salary for doing the same job in the same location, people have got mortgages to pay. There's going to be a question had there, But I think a lot of the things that people neglect outside of salary and benefits are around the kind of career progression, actually having really clear, transparent steps of how to progress within an organisation. Really strong communication. Is the culture great? Do you have a best friend at work? All of these kind of good things around it. I think are missing in a lot of organisations. I think development as well, especially when the market gets a little bit tough. So classically, marketing budgets get slashed, learning and development budgets get kind of slashed, and that's sometimes when people like wobble a little bit. So part of the stuff I've been doing on the kind of, I've called it exec coaching, but it's business coaching, and it's coaching with individuals. Is like that type of approach can certainly help people feel like that they're more engaged and I don't know, looked after by their employer. That's something we're doing actually in our business. We're giving coaching to everybody, but we offer as a service as well. But it doesn't have to be that. It can be training of any kind, to help people get to where they want to get to, and like it feels like somebody's got their back really. And I think these are the type of things that I've seen get neglected. I mean, clearly there are companies that do it amazingly well and have great retention. They really understand it, but a lot of organisations don't, I think.
Really useful. And this is my last question. So the podcast is called Tomorrow's Workplace Today. Yep. So we ask all guests, cast your mind forward 10 years and what does the workplace of 10 years time look like? What does it look like? Describe that to me.
Well, if it's going to be my workplace, I'm going to be sat in a lodge in a mountain, snowboarding in the winter, and
sounds good.
and biking in the summer. I think it's going to be a global workforce, a bit like this digital nomad type piece, where people are choosing where they want to live. Interestingly, something that I think may well happen is I think that we might find jobs getting shared actually. So there's a big share culture at the moment, coming into a lot of things certainly within the younger generations, where you're looking at like apps where you share things and split things, and I think that actually there might be a job share culture that comes in where there's a lot of people, interestingly. So very quickly, my wife struggled to get back into work after having kids because she worked in sales, hotel sales, and there was loads of travel, and the travel meant that she couldn't get back into it. Strangely, the pandemic cut that, and now she's back in hotel sales. But a lot of her kind of friends and ex-colleagues have been in a similar space, and a lot of them talk about they'd love to be back in work, but they can't because of childcare or what have you. And actually having some kind of job split with good quality individuals, I can see that happening, and I see that people want more free time. So it's maybe something naturally that will just evolve over time.
Like it. We've not had that one before. Love it. Brilliant. James, thank you for joining us.
Thanks,
really
guys.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Excellent.